Hello, hello. I'll give everyone a moment to connect to sound. Hello and welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's 1320th New Social Environment. I'm Joshua, a programs associate here at the Rail, and I have the pleasure and privilege of being your MC today for a conversation featuring Stephanie Heit, Petra Kuppers, Cynthia Ling Lee, and Cole Swensen. And now I'll introduce today's guests and host. Stephanie Heit is a queer disabled poet, dancer, teacher, and co-director of Turtle Disco, a somatic writing space on Anishinaabe territory in Ypsilanti, Michigan. Her practices explore the themes of movement, language, and mental health difference, often within site-specific inquiries involving water. She's a mad activist, a shock psych system survivor, and a member of the Olimpias and an international disability performance collective. Her poetry collections are the award-winning book of hybrid memoir poems, Psych Murders, and The Color She Gave Gravity. Petra Kuppers is a German disability culture activist and a community performance artist who uses somatics, performance, media, and speculative poetry to engage audiences toward more socially just and enjoyable futures. Her third performance poetry collection, Botany, won the 2022 Creative Book Award by the Association for the Study of Literature and the Environment. Her Diver Beneath the Street, published in 2024, investigates true crime and ecopoetry at the level of the soil. A Guggenheim Fellow, she leads the Olimpias International Disability Culture Collective and co-directs Turtle Disco. Her current work focuses on planting disabled futures, a virtual reality/community performance project as part of a Just Tech Fellowship. Cynthia Ling Lee is a Taiwanese-American interdisciplinary artist who creates embodied art rooted in crip, queer, and feminist of color praxis. Created through intimate, collaborative processes, her artwork translates choreographic and chronically ill knowledge into poetry, sound, film, visual art, and beyond. Cynthia's work has been presented internationally at venues including Leslie Lohman Museum of Art, Red Cat, Kwandu Arts Festival, and Chandra Mandapa Spaces. Current projects include Scores for Chronically Ill Bodies, a set of movement scores developed with and for chronically ill body minds, and Call and Response, a crip dance poetry project with Krista Miranda. Our host today, Cole Swensen, is the author of 20 volumes of poetry, most recently And, which was longlisted for the Griffin Poetry Prize, and a collection of critical essays, Noise That Stays Noise. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass the virtual mic over to you, Cole.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for being here. This conversation is about saying thank you to people who give up their own creative time, their writing time to help others do their own creative work. And that sacrifice is just so appreciated. So we've got some really interesting projects today to hear about. We'll start, as we always do, with some readings. We'll hear first from Petra, and then from Cynthia, and then Stephanie will close out the program after the Q&A. So, Petra, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here. I'm just putting some access copies into the chat. So, yay. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me. So glad to be reading with you all, sharing our practices with you all. Petra, she, her. I'm a white queer woman with silver-pelled hair. I have green glasses. Right now, I'm having this kind of blacky, glittery lipstick going on. I wear a pink top over a black one, and I'm in my little creative cave here, which has a very matching pink background. And I come to you from Anishinaabe territory in Ypsilanti, Michigan. And the two pieces I'm going to read to you, just to give you a sense of how I write, are also created in collaborative environments. So I thought it'd be really fun to highlight here material that emerges from these kinds of contexts rather than just work that I'm working on purely by myself. So I just put the two links into the chat, so I'm going to read them in that order. The first one is from a little booklet. This is a new chaplet. It's actually sold out, so I don't really need to hawk it at this point because it's gone, but it's so sweet. It's a Pain Planet, and I'm holding up a handmade artist books with beautiful handmade papers, interleaves, just a gorgeous thing. And it's called Pain Planet. And it was written In my Starship Somatics sessions. So I'm running Starship Somatics through movement research every Tuesday morning at 11 o'clock. Now in its sixth year, we began when the lockdown period of the pandemic began. And it's a disability culture somatics environment where people can participate from around the world. And we are going on these dream journeys together. And one of the ways in which I'm processing what I'm doing in those sessions is through writing. So I'm going to read one of these poems for you. And this is a part of a sonnet crown. It's called Geode Dance. And a geode, for those who do not know, is a hollow in the rock. So it's rock, and there's a hollow inside, and water has trickled in and has laid itself down in crystals inside this hollow in the rock. So, geode dance. My knee reflects in the geode's pink, dim, swollen light. I dance, a curve, twist, fly over the sharp point pivot. No far down weight bores with might into my tired bone, so I hover. Gravity's lift riveted in the earth, each breath suspension. Bone, balloons, sails through rock, earth and night, digested soil and hardened sand. Pools in crystal of a landing, soft takeoff through fissure, all open to flock. Tissue releases orange fire, cools in the underwater stream. White pain flows like lava from my joints to temper, vanish in silk blue mineral waters, a compress of the deep, whimper as I float, kin to worm and beetle, embrace, caress this healing trance. Abandon gravity. Let the scarlet blood stream, delta, inflamed spot soothed in the shelter of blue, deep black. Thank you, guys. All right. And the second piece I'm reading is from something called Interstellar Flight Press, which is a very cool press that created a round robin. Toby McNutt, who is a poet and dancer, curated a round robin series where Toby asked a bunch of queer disabled poets to be in conversation with one another. And Toby and Interstellar Flight Press published these poems, and they are just sort of they're in response to one another. And mine was the first one. And so here is my queer quip poem called Blackberry Ball. First, the pink land felt sterile, fallow after devastation. Now they come again to dance, blossom without cultivation, drift lavender songs of vibration to crack through lava, ashes, rust. No lines in bramble thought, hear strangers twirl in fecund wind. Curvilinear patterns drag blue earth into whirlpool, swagger. Watch that glorious dike of matter mix a mud-hot earth against the axe. Unique familiars cure the devil's fire. Tarts burn uncanny ecologies into patterns that hex sweet soil. Eat the green spell, spit the thorn-defended shrub until this queer-ass brain twitches into screams. Velvet magenta joissance held by land guardians' arms. Globular bursts gild orchids' tongues. Come, come here, get that cake. We'll bake a yellow home here, embroider emotional intimacy into all edges, rheumatoid thumbs ned with electric care, this newly dark brown hopefulness, white rootlets explore excess, trunks long gone, hold orange circle, house mothers bring nitrite glitter, limping feet crumble, earth for pores toward red slippage, for all, indigo mini caves, let's house our shimmer disco ball. All right, thank you. That was my little queer crib ball
Thank you
reading.
so much. What a great start. And we'll turn it over now to Cynthia.
I'm just gonna let these glittering hearts for Petra float around for a moment. That was beautiful. Thank you so much, Petra. So this is Cynthia speaking. I'm calling in from Ramaytush Ohlone land, and I'm a Taiwanese American human with black hair and an asymmetrical cut, light brown skin, glasses that are a little too big for my face, and a dimple when I smile, which is often. Um, I'm going to first share with you a video poem. It's called These Days I Keep My Grief Leashed. I actually shot the footage for this in March 2020. At the time, I was undergoing complications from hand surgery and also in the beginning of a journey with long COVID. And of course, we're all under lockdown. I wrote the poem 4 years later and added it as a voiceover to the video. So this little 1 minute video it's like a collaboration with my past self that also archives a year-long sort of movement into disability. Joshua, would you mind sharing the video with folks? Thank you. These days, I keep my grief leashed. Take her out sometimes for a snack or a small walk. She is a little blob, the color of a dark bruise, a red firecracker-haired explosive snap, a midnight blue puddle on the floor. I tend to my grief as you would a small child or a beloved pet. Sometimes I speak to her, but more often we sit together quietly. I fold her into my arms and stroke her back until her spines retract and she changes color to the softest sky blue. Or does not. Thank you. Oh, there was just a burst of heart emojis. Beautiful, thank you. The rest of the poetry I'm going to share with you today, they are poems that act as dance scores. So if you're not familiar with what a dance score is, it's basically like a set of guidelines or instructions for movement improvisation. This next poem is called The Shape of Infinity, and it's from an ongoing collaboration called Call and Response with my very dear friend Krista Miranda, who is on this call with us today and is also a crit poet and dancer. Our process involves like shifting back and forth between improvised dancing and writing poetry. And I want to acknowledge that while I'm the primary author of the poem, it does contain language that was written and contributed by Krista. The poem was inspired by this dance improv I did to the audio description of a piece called Circle or Prophetic Dream. This is a performance work by low vision choreographer Christopher Verde Nunez. And I wanted to pop a link in the chat to an access copy of this for folks who find it helpful to read along. Are you guys able to open that? Just making sure I got my settings right. Good. Okay. So this is The Shape of Infinity. Tell the air, you know my secrets. The body is both breath and liquid. Let invisible winds dance you, weather vane always shifting direction. Clandestine rhythms emerge, your hips, the boss of the body, but someone keeps changing the channel. Currents course through joint and lung, ripple and flood through warm salt blood, causing cascades of spiraling undulation until your flesh forgets itself and, spinning, you find yourself at the still heart of it all. The whirling world fades and you see only my hand, here, now, suspended in a vortex of time. Trick yourself into believing your heart rate is not rising, We are not traveling. We are still, 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 pulling dreams from the sky like birds of paradise. We ride on a never-ending carousel rotating round, round, round to a childhood song in the shape of infinity. So that was The Shape of Infinity. The last poem I'm going to share with you today is a dance score called Moss Time, Crypt Time. Thank you, everyone. This score pays tribute to Moss as a beloved teacher of lessons in crypt survival and thriving. And I want to acknowledge it was first published as a poem in Michigan Quarterly Review for a special edition that Petra was co-editing. So thank you, Petra. And then I later turned it into a dance film. Today, I'm going to read the poem aloud while showing some stills from the film. You can read the poem along in the access copy. I've also put after that some image descriptions of the stills. So give me a moment to share my screen. Mhm. There. Can y'all see that? Good, perfect. Moss time, crypt time, after Robin Wall Kimmerer. Lie on a rock or other surface. Feel the radiant heat and microclimates formed between body and rock. Do the slow dance of erosion. Open your pores to the sun. Trail water droplets against skin, the effortless capillary love between water and cellulose. Imagine being drenched in water, grow luxuriantly. Imagine drought, crinkle up, wait. Let eons go by. Persist. That's it from me.
Thank you both so much. You've got us off to a great, great start. And we'd love to hear about some of your projects. I know that you all are involved in so many things, sometimes in collaboration, sometimes collaboration with other people, sometimes individual projects. Just to name a few, there's Olimpias, Turtle Disco, Mad Conductors, Moss Time, Crypt Time, Planting Disabled Futures, the Asylum Project. Every Horizon Turns Liquid. There's just so many things you all are doing that seem to all center around touch, community, movement, support. And so I'd like, if you could, to maybe sort of give us a map of these so we can see how they're interconnected. And maybe we'll start with you, Petra, with talking about planting disabled futures.
Yay, thank you so much. Yay, lovely. Cynthia, I love everything you just shared right now. It's so beautiful and it intersects so gorgeously. Just wonderful. So, planting disabled futures and all the connections between all these things. So, just before that, I just want to say Olimpias is a name that came about 40 years ago when I first started working in disability culture. So I've been disabled all my life, and I worked with mental health system survivors in Wales, and we were thinking about how to use performance technology to share our beauty, our gorgeous presence. And so we started doing video installations, and that was the first time the word Olympias was used. And it never took off because I'm spelling Olympias with all I's and no Y's. It's like limping gods and Olympia, the woman in, the uncanny essay, the Sandman. So anyway, no one ever gets these references. So world domination eluded me with the Olympias. But the great thing is that people from around the world have been associated with this group, this wide open collective, and so many people have participated. So it's been great. And then 10 years ago, when Stephanie and I got together, Stephanie is my wife, my beloved spouse. So when we got together, we decided that we wanted to have a local site for the Olimpias as well. So we wanted to have like somewhere that's like in the neighborhood. And that's how Turtle Disco came about. So Turtle Disco is our somatic writing studio that we run out of our living room, right beneath where I'm sitting here. And many people come from the neighborhood, but people also come from further away. And one of the people who came was Cynthia. So we had these, so quite usually about every year, I run a mini symposium where I invite fellow artists who are on the kind of journey with me to come to Michigan. I work at the University of Michigan, so I'm able to leverage some funding there. So people come out, and Cynthia came out last November, right? Two Novembers ago, when we started to plan planting disabled futures, and you were part of these initial conversations, and I'm really glad that you were part of that. So that's a little bit of the of the way it all hangs together. And Planting Disabled Futures is a virtual reality community performance piece, which means we just had a residency in Detroit for these last 2 days, and we had a wonderful time. We had two forms of sharing. One is where we're in a big theater and we have projections behind us, and then we're having a community jam in front of the projections. And the second way we're sharing is through small house parties where a small amount of people come together, sit around, and we share two headsets amongst each other. And we get to witness each other taking in the delight of what it means to be in virtual reality. To give you a tiny hint of that, Joshua has two videos lined up for us. I'm going to give you just under a minute of flying with the background. So watching this in 2D is nothing like 3D, but you can just go, Joshua, just press. Thank you. Yeah, so that gives you a sense of what our world looks like. Yeah, there's a little bit of sound you can hear, which is great. But you see this world of purple trees, waterfalls. You see these blue-green portals that are in the trees, and you're actually able to fly into those portals. And I'll show you in a minute what is in one of them. And all around you are these gorgeous, fantastical forests. You also see mushrooms. In a minute, I think you're going to see some isopod. We're flying by a little isopod critter. We love the little critters in there. And this gorgeous piece is the computer graphics are created by Danny Vincent. I've been working with the emergent technologies people at the University of Michigan, and I have a wonderful team there who created this glorious environment based on cyanotype and watercolor material that I had prepared myself. And then this is how they translated that into this gorgeous 3D world. So I'm just going to fly until we see the isopods here. There you go. You see those cute little isopod creatures? Love them. They're so cute. So they move when you're in the actual world. You can interact with them. They move around and like skitter around, and they're just utterly adorable. Thank you, Joshua. Good for us. So you got a sense of that. I once again say 2D and 3D are totally different from one another. It feels very different if you're right inside of it, but I can't share that in a 2D Zoom screen. And so if you were to fly into one of these portals, you then find many of these collaborating artists. So, and I want to share one of these. Actually, two people are on here, which is great. So Bree Gant is here. Hi, Bree. Quite a lot of people flew into your portal last night, actually, including a bunch of people who knew you. So it was absolutely fabulous for them to see you in our world. And the other person who's here is Ashwini Basi. Hi, Ashwini. I'm glad you're here too. So I have a portal lined up that Ashwini is in. Yes, exactly. So this is the portal that Ashwini created. So we have Ashwini's fabulous visual artwork, and I'm just going to run this whole thing. So you're flying into the portal, and then you can see this. And this is also very exciting. You can come closer or get further away from the image when you're in the 3D world. So it's very exciting. You're not just looking at it the way we're looking at it now. You have control over how close you get to the image. So you can actually read some of this writing, this glorious writing that Ashwini has created here in the visual poem when you're in the world itself. It's a curry plant, green, multiple segments. Ashwini Basi reaches up and pulls down gently on one of the twigs.
The curry leaves sway in the wind that comes in through the open window. Outside, it's colder than the temperature it can survive in. I sit still, watch the leaves unlearn what they were born to do. Survive in a monsoon thunderstorm and the flood of the river. I'm alone here in this glass house with the transplanted plants. Immigrants sometimes have overactive immune systems. Their bodies turn on themselves for the lack of clarity on what is foreign and what is not. Do you remember the soil you sprouted from? Or do you forget the scent of the earth you called home, the moist warmth of the love you left behind, the tropical abandonment of desire? The curry tree looks listless under glass. There are two saplings near its roots. I wish I could take them home with me, give them a life full of scents and sounds that they are meant to hear. The thunderstorms, the sound of the hornbill as it descends, wingtip rustling against the tile roof, my mother calling out to me to pluck a few dark green curry leaves from the lobus branch and bring the sprig to her as she's waiting for the coconut oil in the earthen pot to reach the right temperature. I pluck the leaves, hastily run to my mother. She separates the leaves, tosses them into the tempering. The leaves hiss and the oil splatters. The kitchen fills with the scent of my childhood.
Thank you. And thanks, Ashwini, for sharing that with us, creating this beautiful piece. I love it. Thank you. Yay. Yeah, so that gives you a really good sense of how Planting Disabled Futures works. It's like an archive. It's an archive of disability culture, which is what most of my projects are. And I'm seeing here again in the list of who's here, Chanika Svetvilas is with us, who was in the previous project, the Cripmat Archive Dances. I want to shout out to you and your wonderful work. I see other people here that have hosted me in the past. A wonderful disabled poet, Aqua Leslie Hope. I'm so glad you're here, and I just want to shout out to you too. So we work. Jennifer Spector is here all the way from Panama. It's great to see you. There's this wonderful connective web, and my practices are about enriching that web and offering space for us to see each other's beauty. Thank you.
Thank you. You really gave us a great sense, and web seems to be the operative word. Let's hear from Stephanie. We need to get your voice in the air and tell us about one of your projects.
Sure, lovely. Yes, hello everyone. What a rich web we're already weaving here. And I will start just with an audio description, just coming from disability culture, which I think is another umbrella that Petra, Cynthia, and I are all sharing in our work as far as different access modes. So I am a queer, disabled, white cis woman. I have a wavy brown bob. I'm wearing a red shirt with dangling earrings, and I have some plant friends in the background here. And let's see, as far as Mad Conductors is a collaborative performance project that I co-direct with Alexis Riley, who Alexis identifies as a psychiatric survivor, also is a dramaturge and theater artist. And we initially met with the idea for my book, Psych Murders. I initially had the idea that I wanted to make that into a whole performance piece. So I was meeting with Alexis and to be a dramaturge for that piece. But as we began to work together, it was like something new wanted to evolve, and I didn't want it to be solo work. So in this project, we're looking at transmuting and transforming personal experiences for me of shock treatment, for Alexis of psychiatric medication, brain zaps, And as far as exploring electricity shock connection, very much about memory, we've been asking questions as far as what happens when energy is transferred. How do memories get held? Can that be a collective? Can that be an ensemble? And also, importantly, how can we hold the gaps? For me, as a shock survivor, for after those treatments, I lost a lot of long-term and short-term memory. So it's been a lot of navigation of how to be with gaps. And within this project, we have played with workshops. One of them was at the Center for Mad Culture in Chicago, which I just love that a Center for Mad Culture exists, and mad in terms of madness. A workshop where we had people remember something, a memory, and actually intentionally a positive or a pleasurable memory, and then to share it with someone else with the contract of holding each other's memories. And the person listening then would jot down 3 phrases or 3 words that to them held that memory. And so we played with different modalities of holding through sound as well, through gesture. How to have this not be a singular activity, which is one thing I love about collaboration, how there can be the rubbing up against each other and against each other's experiences, how it can yield, the third thing, the fourth thing. It can open up possibilities for that. And you'll see later in the slideshow, in the early days of Mad Conductors, I actually was doing a workshop by the Bay in Oakland. And we were playing with thinking about electricity moving from the water, from the environment, through our bodies and passing it to each other. So a lot of collaborative work for me, as well as my individual practices, place my system in specific environments to really play within those and play with the human and non-human beings in those places, which is for me another type of collaboration. So sometimes I do that solo. Often I do that with Petra. Sometimes I do that in groups under the umbrella of Turtle Disco. So that's more than a nugget, but a little glimpse into some of those practices.
And a good way of showing how some of these things are interlaced and, reach out tentacles to touch each other. It's really nice. And Cynthia, do you want to tell us something about maybe more about the Moss Time Crypt Time or another project?
Sure, I'd be delighted to. Moss Time Crypt Time is a dance score that became a dance film, but its origins were, I think, in 20 spring of 2022. I was in Irvine at UC Irvine doing a research residency on long COVID, and I was only like a couple years into living with this condition that doctors didn't know that much about at the time and still don't know that much about. Um, and I was just listening to this narrated essay by Robin Wall Kimmer called Deep, something like Moss and Deep Time. Sorry, I'm not remembering it exactly, but it's in Emergence magazine if you guys want to look it up. And she has this beautiful voice and she's like theorizing about moss. So Robin Wall Kimmer is this native Potawatomi scientist who's a moss scientist. She's most known for her book Braiding Sweetgrass, but she's actually she's a bryologist. So that's like her scientific training. And so she's theorizing about moss and its life ways. And as I was listening, I was like, oh, moss has everything to teach me about how to live well with chronic fatigue and an energy limiting disability. So it's not to say moss is like disabled, but the ways in which it doesn't try to grow when there's no resource. It just sort of like crinkles up and waits. It could wait for like 40 years and then be revived later when there's enough water. the ways in which it's content to live in small niches, the ways in which it celebrates like smallness and horizontality. And so I got inspired and I made this like score for myself, this improvisational score that became this poem. And then later, the beautiful Moira Williams, who's also a friend and part of this connective tissue with Petra and Stephanie and I. Moira is a beautiful disabled Indigenous multidisciplinary artist, and they curated this exhibition in San Francisco called Crypt Ecologies. And so I created this film for that, and it was screened in a screening that also had films by Petra and Stephanie as well. So our pathways keep sort of like intersecting um, and connecting because like our work speaks to each other in particular ways. And I'm really interested in like a notion of eco-crip embodiment, like what does the non-human world have to teach us as disabled folks? How can we think about the increasing disablement of the natural world in relationship to the wisdom and the knowledge of disabled human people? So that's something that I'm interested in.
Great, thank you very much. I think we've got a sense of the enormous range. And I know you have some visuals that you wanted to go through. So, Joshua, perhaps we could segue into that. And anybody who feels like giving commentary, let us know what's going on.
Yeah, so this is Stephanie. I'm happy to start us off as far as Turtle Disco, and this is a photo of Petra and I. This is 2017, and we're at a table with a 70s brightly colored tablecloth covered with books by queer poets, many disabled. This was in some ways the opening of Turtle Disco. And for the city we live in, Ypsilanti, it was the first Pride event that Ypsilanti had. And so we had this table that was actually a queer poetry rest stop where we invited people wandering through all of the different booths with lots of stimulation, lots happening, to have a seat, and we had tea there, and to select a book to read from. And since many of the poets are friends of ours, we also, when people allowed us, took pictures to send. But so this was the opening of Turtle Disco. And as Petra already mentioned, this is a somatic writing space grounded in disability culture that we both co-direct, that operates out of our living room. When it started in 2017, this was when Trump had just taken the presidency, and we were focused on hyper local as far as how to make community really where we are. How can we have where people literally in the neighborhood can join us for writing explorations, for meditations, for dream journeys? And later with COVID lockdown, we expanded to what we call the Zoom shell. So now we have events that are both in person as well as that are virtual. And some of our guiding, with Turtle Disco, connection, curiosity, care practices, and really experimentation and creativity are some of the things that really connect us. And this is in our ninth year now. Yeah, and it's been quite a beautiful practice. And I'll say as well, as far as for me, living a disabled life, this gives me the opportunity to teach, but without being part of necessarily an institution that would have like a regular schedule. So for my changing capacity, being bipolar, it really allows me to offer more when that's available to me, or offer less. And that's another thing with collaborating over the years with Petra within our projects, that we can kind of one benefit of collaboration, we can support each other. If Petra's having more of a pain day, I can step up more. If I'm having a day where my concentration is more difficult, she can. So that's one of the interdependent aspects of collaboration. So I'll close on that. And Petra, you're welcome to add at any point.
We have lots of photos, so we can move on. But that was a really beautiful day. I've already showed that. That is this gorgeous plant world that Danny Vincents and this team we've all created together, which is just so fun. I think we can move to, yes. So this is, oh yeah, that is super fun. So this is again from the current Planting Disabled Futures project. This is part of a queer clothing exchange party that we had here on a farm in Ypsilanti, a farm that's run by a queer collaborator of ours. And it's outdoors. We have these red camping chairs out, which you saw in the previous pictures from Total Disco. The red camping chairs are sort of our signature. We go to lots of events, usually outdoors, and we set up these red camping chairs, and then there's an event happening there. And so if you see a circle of red camping chairs and a bunch of disabled people, you can totally hook yourself in and join us. So we've done this by the edge of the Huron River, lots of places. So as part of this exchange, I had brought the headset. So you see here one of our local people with a headset on, having a wonderful time. I'm looking at her being in the world, and she's holding Mothra, which is a moth. So we use moth as a transitional object. So when you come out of the virtual reality world, we offer you a plushie. Of course, we offer you a plushie to hold so that you can transition back into this world. And let's see what else. What's the next picture? Yeah, here's Chanika. There you go. Chanika who's here with us. Hi, Chanika. So this is at one of the house parties. This is Stephanie, who works as an access doula for the Planting Disabled Futures project. So when you get into the headset, many people have never had headsets on. This is not like exactly a really common technology. So the vast majority of people that we share this with have never had one on. So we have access doulas who very kindly and in a very interdependent way, in a very respectful way, allow you access into the headset. So we ask your permission to touch you, and if you give it, then we will place your fingers on the right places on the control, and we just teach you how to be comfortable, and we ground you. We offer to ground you in the headset world. So this is after a party that we had on the east side in New York City. And we go to disabled people's homes. So disabled people invite us, which is great for access intimacy, because as a woman who for the longest time I've been using a wheelchair to get around, I haven't been in many private homes because most private homes are inaccessible. These days I walk a little bit better and I can get into spaces, but usually I can't walk stairs, basically. I can't walk many stairs. So, and I also have a little scooter that I travel around with, so I can't just leave that scooter out in the street. So if there's stairs, I can't get in. But when fellow disabled people invite us in to have a private party, they invite their friends, we bring the headsets, and we're having fun. So this is Chanika and Stephanie having fun, and Chanika's holding a little tardigrade. Yeah, she's holding one of the little critters, transitional critters, a little blue tardigrade. And let's see the next picture. Okay, that's another one of the ways of sharing the Planting Disabled Futures project. See Danny in the background there. I think that is actually Laura Murphy, another one of our collaborators in the background. You see a back projection of our world, and then the person who's using the headset is on a zero gravity chair, which is just a camping chair again, right? We're clearly making significant use of camping chairs in our practice, and it's covered in a plushy cloth, and you can get all comfy in there and get your legs up in the air, which is really fun. All right. And this is from one of the portals again. So this is a different portal. Akila Vimal, who is a blind Indian dancer, and Krista knows Akila. I'm so glad that you get to see her here. So Akila is a wonderful performance scholar and dancer who lives in India, and she was collaborating with me. The beginning of the Planting Disabled Futures project, one of the first beginnings was when I was an artist in residence at the Huntington Botanical Gardens in California. And I was there for a month. And during that time, I had 18 individual meetings with local disabled people. And the really cool thing is that I had a free access, free a botanical garden ticket for everybody to come and play with me. And so people came out and we just had a wonderful time together. And I asked people, what are your favorite plants? What's the plant elder you want to tell me about here in the gardens? And Akila brought me to this bamboo garden. And there's a really beautiful um, portal in the planting disabled tree world where we've shot this little dance where she is actually herself audio describing her experience. So it says here as the caption, it feels like someone has written something here. She feels the bamboo. And if any of you know the Huntington Gardens and the bamboo garden, people do indeed write things into the bamboo. It's just kind of weird. This is not my own aesthetic. I would not want to injure the trees that way, but here we go. So we have this beautiful little video of Akila talking about home, touching the plant, thinking about memory. All right. Okay. Oh my God, here's Bree. There you go. We've put you in, Bree. So this is Bree Gant, who's here. Bree contributed a wonderful video for us. So they contributed this gorgeous video. This is their naked upper body pressing into wet sand and a wave is approaching. So as part of the creation of Planting Disabled Futures, we had a call out to people in our wider community in the Olimpias world to contribute videos. So a lot of videos I've made myself as a video maker. I make both 2D and 360 videos, but many, many videos in this gorgeous world are from contributors like the amazing Bree Gant, who is a fabulous video artist. And I'm very honored that you gave us this video to have in here. And people see it a lot and love it very much. So thank you. And that's back to Stephanie.
Okay, yeah, so this I mentioned the workshop, the offering in Oakland with playing with taking electricity from the environment, the air and the bay. And this was a picture of three people in silhouette. It's Bhumi Patel and Raven Malouf Renning. And this was part of a symposium, which I have the title written down here because I love the title of this symposium, which was organized by Bhumi and Petra, Co-Dreaming, Improvisation Toward Liberatory Worlding. So one thing I love about when we gather together for symposiums is just the opportunity to try things out, without necessarily a lens towards product, but just experiment and play. So that was definitely what was happening here with I'd never really explored this with the group. And so, yeah, Joshua, I think you can go to the next slide, please. Yes, and here we are in, this is our backyard, the Turtle Disco Garden. You can see the red camping chairs here. And actually, Ashwini Basi has her arms up in the middle. This was a Mad Conductors workshop where we were playing with holding memory. And as you can see in the middle, there are instruments. So we were playing with sounds and creating sound scores for each person's memory. So embodying those in different ways. And as you may notice, for Turtle Disco and for the events, there's we really try to have an intimacy and in some ways a casualness about being with each other, which sometimes is different than, when a performance is on the stage. It allows us, for one, many disabled people, many stages are not accessible, and many rehearsal schedules for doing a production like that is not within capacity. So this performance in the back of our garden just was quite playful and fun and leaning into the unknown. So yeah, and I'm not sure the next slide, you can shift to that. And here we are. This is at our local Riverside Arts Center. And let's see, Cynthia, I don't know if I see you in this picture, but I know you were there that
I
day.
was there. It was delightful.
So this was we were playing with connection and electrical synapse with the use of scars, and this was part of a disability culture gathering in which Cynthia was there. Many people came from other parts of the U.S. to gather together. All right, and next slide, please. Yes, and so this is a picture actually at Riverside Arts Center in their dance space, a circle that was just taken a couple months ago for contemplative movement and writing practice, which is a form that I've been facilitating for over a decade. And just to give tribute for lineage, I originally encountered contemplative dance practice at Naropa, then Institute, now University, where I studied with Barbara Dilley. And Barbara Dilley, wonderful improviser and dancer and also Buddhist practitioner, created this form that she called the Dancer's Meditation Hall. And one thing I love is that she offered it to the community with the invitation to make adaptations. So I have made the practice into contemplative movement and writing practice as far as it involves meditation as well as a section of open movement, both alone and together. And there are a couple sections of writing invitations. And so this is a space where I know both Petra and I end up doing a lot of writing that turns into other things. And it's different to write in community with people around you. It's also different to write after moving and after exploring and literally being in space and how that space can affect what's on the page. All right, next slide, please. And I'm going to pass it off to Cynthia now. Thanks.
This is me. This is from Moss Time, Crypt Time, so we can just move forward because I talked about it. Move forward. And then you saw this film as well. These days I keep my grief leash, so let's look at the next slide. Okay, this is a still from the trailer for a project I've been working on for a very long time. It's called Inventory of Joy, and it's an experimental dance documentary with one of my best friends, Megan Moody, who is disabled, trained as an anthropologist, but studied theater and dance rather seriously in her younger adult life. And Megan has HEDS and hemispheric dystonia. And at one point, she asked me to work with her to kind of demonstrate the efficacy of a particular, very old Parkinson's medication for treating dystonia. And her proposal sounded like it would take two rehearsals. I was like, sure. And now, like 5 years later, we're working on this documentary film. And part of she's said to me that what I do with her, and I'm not trying to like lift myself up, I just think it's interesting, that the kind of things we do together are more useful to her understanding her body and its potentials, limits, and capacities than any neurologist she's ever been to. And so this documentary film is kind of like archiving our process and our friendship. And it's interested in joy because it's it's a very dominant narrative to associate disability with like tragedy and grief and mourning and sadness. And of course, there's the need to have room for mourning and sadness, but it's also really important to celebrate and lift up joy. And so that's what we're doing in this project. You can move on to the next slide. Oh, I put this piece in here, Oceanic, Queering the Ocean, to kind of make tentacle-like connections to technology and environment and disability. So this is a piece that Misha Cardenas, who's a beautiful trans Latina multidisciplinary artist, invited me to collaborate with her on. And our other collaborators are Gerald Cosell, a wonderful Filipino gay contemporary dance artist, and then two media artists, like they work in film and experimental digital media, Susana Ruiz and Huey Trong, and then Anna Friz did our music. So this piece actually has two forms. One is an augmented reality app. So Petra's been talking about VR, and VR, you have a headset and you're like in this digital world. In AR, you have like a tablet or a phone, and it like superimposes media on top of wherever you are in the world. And so there's an app with us dancing and poetry related to ecology, bodies, environment, grappling with a moment of climate chaos and COVID. Um, and then there's also a 2D film, which has some of the footage that was volumetric. So if I'm a little technical, sorry. So there's regular, beautiful, like HD 2D film. And then there is footage that was shot in 3D. So in the AR app, this means you can go closer and far away, and you can go around the bodies. And so this sort of like pixelated body, which is actually me in front of these pieces of kelp. That's what the three-dimensional footage looks like when it's flattened on a two-dimensional surface. So that's what it looks like in the film. And this place we are is very beloved. It's Natural Bridges on Amamutsin land in Santa Cruz, California. Um, and it's a beautiful place. And Misha chose it in particular because in like this bridge called Our Back, the very important feminist of color anthology. Like there's this second edition where Gloria Anzaldúa does this new forward, and she talks about this place in particular, and she also talks about the exclusion of trans women from the original anthology and wanting to rectify that. So that was our starting place, and I think that's it from me.
Great. That was really striking. And again, the range is so impressive. And one thing that really struck me is color, is how colorful all the events are. A lot of red, which I equate with joy, a lot of things like scarves moving through the air. It really does seem to kind of bring people together. Um, we're almost to the top of the hour, but I wanted to ask about the connection between disability culture and technology, because that really stands out, this innovative use of really emergent technology. Would anybody have any ideas on that?
I can talk about this one a little bit. And Stephanie's already prepared the ground for this one really beautifully when you were talking about rehearsals. So I've been involved with disability and technology for, yesterday at Wayne State, I had to figure out that it was actually 40 years, which is slightly scary to me, but cool. I know, very cool. And it came about because I was working with mental health system survivors. We were a group of people who all had gone through quite significant experiences in various ways, including incarceration, including depot medication, like really, very complicated institutionalizations. And the work we were doing, we wanted to share it. We do want to share it with the world, but we cannot be visible. We cannot sign up for a rehearsal and another rehearsal and another rehearsal and another rehearsal and a tech rehearsal and then a show and a show and a show and a show. It's just not something that any of us can do. So some disabled people can totally do that, and it's fabulous. And there's a really wide range of disability arts out there. The kind of work that I've been involved in has always been about finding other ways of sharing our co-presence, of sharing our beauty. So technology has very early been the way of trying to figure out a way of sharing what we do without going into the kind of incredibly time-intensive rehearsal processes that are part of traditional stage work. So creating video installations. So we had like video installations in the late 90s, and this was a very unusual thing. In shopping centers in Swansea in Wales. So you could go into this shopping center and see us disabled, mad people lying down, being incredibly serene, being going on a dream journey to the bottom of the sea, and you could just see the gloriousness and the glowingness of ourselves. Or you could stare at us and figure out why we're psychos. You could do that too. You could just, you had that sort of option. I'm always interested in that tension. I do love to share our beauty, and I think the color that you mentioned is very much part of that. But I'm also intrigued in, it's very important to me to have an edge to that, to have a gothic edge, to have some kind of uncanniness. Using virtual reality creates a very uncanny sense as well. And so does the wonderful project, Misha's gorgeous project, which has been an inspiration to me as well, that Cynthia was describing at the end there. That also has a very uncanny feeling of loss, absence, presence going on in it as well. So I very much appreciate both the seduction and then that edge space. And technology can allow us to play with that in a really interesting way.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Anybody want to add anything to that? Right. Good.
Let's see.
Well,
I will add one thing as far as working on planning disabled futures as an access doula. Part of my resource for thinking about how to be an access doula, my very first encounter with virtual reality it was a beautiful project, but there was an assumption that I knew how to use the headset and how to use the hand controls. And so I was in this space. I was next to Petra, who was well versed in how to do these things. She was describing these amazing visuals that she was experiencing. I, meanwhile, in my kinesthetic sense, was moving around the room, not realizing that there's a perimeter and you really can't move too far. So I was experiencing kind of dotted lines with these strange walls and whatnot. So that has been, as far as for being an access doula, kind of like, okay, for a project, something with Planning Disabled Futures, we've thought a lot about of how do you introduce technology to people, disabled or not. Just, it's a different way of being in space and in the world. And so it does take some, unless like someone's really young, like some 10, 12-year-olds who know automatically how to use everything. But other people, it's like you need some guidance. So just adding that little piece.
Actually, I will chime in because I had the great fortune to be able to experience planting disabled futures as a uh, I don't know, an audience member. What's the right word? As one of the people that had sets on my face, when we were at UC Berkeley at a symposium recently. And one of the things that I found the sweetest and most intimate about it, which I really wasn't expecting, was, um, you put on this virtual reality thing and you think you're going to feel totally disembodied, right? But Petra, who, if any of you have met her in person, is incredibly warm and sort of tactile and lovely, like is sitting next to me and, helping me put the headset on my head very carefully and consensually, like asking, like putting my hand on the controller and like gently like moving it so I can like understand how to like navigate the world and that like sense of warmth and physical touch, which I really miss as someone who's immunocompromised and can't just sort of like lie in people puddles with strangers anymore. Like that I wasn't expecting from a VR project. And that I think is really particular to y'all. So I want to appreciate you for doing it in that way.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot, and that feels so central to how I try to approach this as well. Yeah, in the end, we also want to be together, and that is such an important way of trying to figure out how I can use virtual reality as a way to bring people together, to have parties, rather than have us sit in a darkened basement, by ourselves, all sad.
Great. Thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. All three of you have just brought so much, I think, to our understanding and really inspiring, inspiring work. And I'll bet there's a number of questions.
Thank you all so much for that conversation. We have a couple questions queued up for you for the audience Q&A, but if you are in the audience and you have a question for Cynthia, Stephanie, or Petra, we invite you to submit it via the link in the chat. Our first question today um, is, these projects explore both digital and natural landscapes. Can you speak to the relationship between these two environments in your work? And I think this question is directed for everyone, or for anyone who wants to answer.
I'm happy to give it a first try, trying to keep it short. Yes, so our project is very much concerned with environmental practices and technology. So as you saw in some of the pictures that we shared, our headset is standalone. So you're not connected to Wi-Fi. You're not connected to the electric grid. You can take this headset into the middle of the forest and have an experience with a tree and then with our pink tree at the same time. So that's something that's really interesting to me. How can we create tech work that has a very small footprint and that is really aware of the resources of the use of resources and the uneven costs of who bears the costs of those resources. So we're trying to be really aware of surveillance. You know, when you're in our headset, you're not connected to anything, so no one's observing you. Specifically, the meta universe is not observing you. And you have this very, very small footprint, which is something I really had to work with the Emergent Technology Lab. We all work together very, very hard to make sure to create something that is not that doesn't try to be hyper realist and sort of recreate the world, but something that is poetically open. The tree world is not. It's something that gives you space to be and use your own poetic imagination to see what's going on, rather than something that is hyper realistic and hence usually requires a much more storage space. So that's one of the small segments in which environments, inner and outer environments, virtual and real environments interact in the Planting Disabled Futures project.
I'll just say really briefly that for me, digital technology, it's usually about accessibility, um, rather than like the coolest, shiniest new tech whistles and bells, which are lovely. They're just not my expertise. So, for instance, it's much more accessible to me and my body as a performance maker to disseminate work via film rather than to tour, which I used to be an international touring artist. And so, just send a file and then it can play. So there's a practical level of like what is within my capacity, and also doing rehearsals on Zoom rather than needing to travel to meet people and organize and expose yourself to various new toxins or whatever. And I'll just say that a lot of the technologies that we use, including like the Zoom call that this beautiful virtual reading is on, like they were first developed through disability culture, you know? A lot of the technologies that have become really mainstreamed were developed within disabled spaces as forms of accessibility to disabled people. A lot of the stuff that we use with our phones or whatever that come from like blind culture, like voice recognition, etc. And so I just wanted to like lift up the incredible innovation that happens when folks find ways to live their lives and connect and have their needs met in a world that's not built for those particular bodies and minds.
Thank you so much for those answers. Our next question um, comes from the audience, and they ask, what are some programs or collaborations you all are looking forward to?
I can take it again. Well, we're on tour right now, so we are in the middle of playing with so many people, which is absolutely fabulous. So the Planting Disabled Futures project is on tour until right now, very early May. So we are touring nationally, and the website has all been shared, so you can have a look. If you live anywhere nearby and you would like to invite us to come to your living room and share our headsets, we are totally up for that. We love doing that. The whole thing is supported and underwritten by a Just Tech Fellowship, so we don't need any like lots of money or anything. We're very happy to come to people. Yeah, so that's something I'm really looking forward to. We just had 2 days, 2 extraordinary days, working with many, many disabled and non-disabled people at Wayne State University in Detroit and at the Playhouse, which is an amazing experimental theater space in Detroit. So during the day, we were at the university, and in the evening, we had this really fabulous engagement in the community. And every time we share these, we ask people for who their plant elders are. This is the preparation for going into the planting disabled world. And every time we hear the most beautiful stories of plant elders, like Ashwini's video at the beginning, right? We get a sense of what our imagination of our connection to the more than human world is. And that feels like a really rich and gorgeous collaboration. So we're looking forward to many, many more stops as we're carrying this around the nation and play with people.
And I'll just add, as someone going on this tour, excuse me, I love the small collaboration that happens when I'm working with someone with the headset. Sometimes there needs to be an exchange, a back and forth as far as doing the navigation. The other day, I worked with a theater artist who didn't have use of her limbs, and so I was using the hand controller and verbally, we were adjusting with her instruction of where to move and where she wanted to move. So I just find so much delight in just in the moment creation together. Just amplifying these small performances, these small collaborations that are happening under the umbrella of a larger project, but just that human connection. And yeah, that's quite lovely. I'm also looking forward, on Saturday, we have contemplative movement and writing practice, which I love. So a group of people coming together in space together. It's really sweet to be in person as well, and just to improvise and create.
This is Cynthia speaking. I want to talk a little bit more about the call and response project that I mentioned earlier, especially because my beloved collaborators here on this call. So just like let you know about the like larger scale of it. So we've been working for about a year producing all of these different poetic scores. They're poems, they're also dance scores that are based on improvisations we've done to scores by disabled artists, sometimes ourselves, sometimes our colleagues, people like Petra. Um, and so we're building towards a book, like a collection of poems that will be published as a book. We're also creating an album. So we were thinking about what would make these poems more accessible to like blind and low vision people. And of course, we could read them out loud as an audiobook, and we'll probably do that. But I thought it would be more fun if you had tracks that were actually where the music or the sound was really artfully composed, and I come from like a long history of musical collaboration. I also have been started playing piano when I was 4. I have lots of musical training. So we're collaborating with two beautiful disabled composers. One is named J.F. Rosando. He's this colleague of mine at UC Santa Cruz. He's a beautiful um, composer who thinks about aural like hearing diversity, and really pushes the edges of like what is music. A lot of his music is not even sound-based. And then we're working also with a composer named Alexa Dexa, who I should look up their actual language for describing themselves, but I think it's like Crip, Mad, Grandma Core, Song Spell Witch, who sings like something. So we're making an album based on some of our scores that will have their music. And then just the other day, Krista and I were cooking up yet another iteration of this project because I've gotten obsessed with making books. And I was like, what if I made artist books for our scores? And then Krista was like, I'm gonna make kinetic wire sculptures. So then we like cooked up a vision for like an exhibition with artist books and wire sculptures with like little speakers playing the scores. And so this is not finished. This is like a prototype of one that I made the other day of one of our scores. This is a score that I created that is an annotation of an existing piece by Pelena Keke Brown. So Pelena Keke took medical records and wrote blackout scores, so blacked out a lot of medical bullshit, and then left particular words. Those are the ones that look white, and then these the like white boxes with black text, and then the white text I annotated on top. So this is a prototype, like an idea I'm working with. So that's one project I wanted to give a shout out about. And Krista, feel free to chime in if you want to add in.
Thank you all so much for sharing those upcoming projects. We have one final question from the audience before I go ahead and turn it over to Stephanie to close us out today. And this question is, what are some challenges that you've faced in the development of your work?
Let's see, I'm happy to start out with that. Well, a project that I haven't mentioned, I'm currently working with the Huron River, which is the local river that runs through Ypsilanti. Um, and so I have been doing site visits there, listening, interacting with the river, playing with, I'm hearing Cynthia mentioning artist books, playing with creating artist books with the shape of the river, also tracing the walkway. I have a map of the gutter system, and where the storm drains, the path that it goes to the river, and walking those pathways. And so I'd say for me, one of the challenges is um, often I gather. I'm someone who I love to explore and put out a lot of tendrils, and I gather and I gather. I gather a lot of material, and often I'd say sometimes I wait past the point of deciding, as far as the river imagery, where that destination is or what I want it to be, which is a really fun. But as far as producing, sometimes I feel like I need to hone things in. So that's one challenge I will yeah, I will share, which can be fun, but doesn't always lend to constrained time frames.
And I guess one challenge, and it's an exciting challenge, it's like a constrained challenge, is that I'm playing in many different playing fields, right? So I'm playing in the disability world, I'm playing in the poetry world, I'm playing in the performance world, in the dance world, and I'm also playing in the tech world. And sometimes translation is an issue. You know, words mean different things in these different fields. And that can be very exciting, but it can also sometimes lead to, well, as someone who limps, I use stumbling usually as a very helpful thing to do. Stumbling is a good way to slow down a little bit and see what's going on. But this leads to stumbles, right? It leads to some disconnects. And again, collaboration is a really fabulous way of addressing that kind of challenge. So we have a tech consultant, Laura Murphy, who has a PhD in mechanical engineering. And Laura is a part of our team and was part of our Detroit visit as well. And Laura is someone who's incredibly helpful in telling the tech world what is innovative and interesting about this performance poetry experiment, Planting the Stable Futures, right? So it's so helpful to have a team that doesn't just come out of any one area, but has like multiple different people in it. Cynthia, the project that you were describing has this as well, right? Lots of people who are playing in many different playing fields. Some of us are interdisciplinary, and some of us are more disciplinary, but are able to listen to one another and figure out where the stumbles are, where the disconnects are. For me, it was, interestingly enough, the term modular. So obviously our project is modular. I'm trying to always create structures that allow many different people to plug themselves in, like these gorgeous pieces that you saw that people contribute, like poems, videos. So it's a modular environment. Modular in a tech environment can mean something very different. It can speak to the architecture of the game engine that underlies the project. So at times we've just been talking totally past one another because we just had a different sense of what that word meant. And having someone to sit with us and limp along a little bit and figure out with some time, like what can we do with that, has been incredibly useful. So yeah, a cool challenge.
I'll share one challenge that came up in the making of Moss Time, Crypt Time, the film. So I found it incredibly hard to rehearse. Um, the pieces you might have been able to tell by the stills, it takes place sort of like half in this concrete world, which is the driveway where my house is. That was fairly accessible to me. But then the other part is in this like lush, beautiful, old growth redwood forest. And it was wet. It was winter because that's when moss is happiest in California. And I was finding that even though I chose a spot for filming that was like, it was like relatively flat, not that far from the parking lot. Um, but I was like using up all of my capacity walking to my rehearsal site and like knowing I had to walk back. I was getting soaked to the bone. Like, and I was like, I don't know how to do this. I don't actually have enough space to really explore the movement, to develop it fully, because I'm cold, I'm wet, I'm gonna crash, and I just feel like weeping because I used to be able to do this so easily. So I was talking to my collaborators, and I mean, there's many ways in which they all supported me in beautiful ways, but so Pamela Rodriguez Montero, who made this incredible, like spectacular costume for me, she was like, "Oh, okay," and she like makes no big deal out of it. She's like, give me your costume. I'm gonna do some things, and you can go test them out later." She lines everything with waterproof fleece, thin fleece, so that I will like remain, my ass and my body will remain dry while I'm dancing. It makes like a world of difference, and she just sort of like gives it to me. Meanwhile, my housemates at the time, they're both disabled. One has a wheelchair that they use sometimes, and the other is neurodivergent, sort of like a little more physically able. And so they're like, Elsie was like, "I will lend you my wheelchair," and Nikki was like, "I will push you in Elsie's wheelchair so that you can use all of your energy on actually developing the movement." And I was like, "And you guys are just gonna like sit there in the woods while I rehearse?" And they're like, "Yeah, it'll be great. We'll read a book in the redwoods." It sounds terrible. And they did this for me several times. And I was so moved at this like community network of people who were just so lovingly did exactly what I needed to make something possible that was like making me weep in a bad way earlier. So then it made me weep in a good way. So I just felt like that's like crip interdependence. So I wanted to shout that out because that piece, if you look at it sometimes and you don't look at the end credits, it can look like a solo piece, but it really is a deeply collaborative um, work. And I just felt so taken care of in the most beautiful way.
Thank you so, so much for sharing that with us. That concludes our audience Q&A for today. And so I'm going to turn it over to you, Stephanie, to close us out.
All right, lovely. And I just dropped an access copy for the two poems I'm going to share with you. And the first piece I actually wrote during a turtle disco session where I was looking at a spider web that was between the screen and the window. And as I'm reading it, I want to invite all of you in your spaces just to identify a location or something in the space to act as a threshold or portal to a different world. So instead of the portals in Planning Disabled Futures that are digital, this can just be a portal for your own imaginations at this point. And this is what I explored in this portal. Windowsill of evolution. Belly down on plush turquoise acrylic blanket. The weight of other people's breath in the room. I enter, exit, destine the portal, ephemeral spin and half moons. Local spider craft webs whisper between window and screen. Come. I'm not ready. Count my digits, count my fins, my vertebral bodies, my leptocircled tail, then count myself backwards and sideways by epochs. Once upon a time. One cell splits, multiplies. I speculate myself, ergonomic curves, oxygen-defiant capacities, tree-informed carbon usage, ocean bottom critter adaptations. Hello, giant spider crab, vampire squid. Greetings, Greenland shark. Evolution requests. Give me pterodactyl wings. Give me climate change tolerant skin, falcon sight, raccoon scrappiness, albatross long haul endurance. Breath fills the sides of my mouth, tongue at palate, scales and feathers sensitize, multi-use epidermis. Brain a decentralized nervous system with tightrope antics, dendrite delay, synaptic explosions. Try, 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 try. Animal with soft furnishings. I don't return. Thank you. And for the last piece that's called Luthier's Prepare the World for Dawn. I actually had the experience of having a conversation with the luthier around getting a new sound post for my cello, but this actually was written initially on the coast of the Pacific Ocean in Big Sur. Petra and I were at Esalen for my 50th birthday, and Garth Stevenson, who's a musician and a composer, was playing his upright bass with the ocean behind. So that was the sensorial location for creating this. Luthiers prepare the world for dawn. Earth requires a new sound post. Old one knocked loose, regular gravity tilt-a-whirl, exacerbated by climate catastrophe. Luthiers work long hours to fashion this pivot, longer to get it just right. Breath a measure of ocean wave, width of tree ring, delicate horsehair of a bow. They tie their black smocks, attend the ground's changing pulses, skilled in the overture of making things sing. Shrug off humankind's expectations, no fix for this green-blue marble. They work with the instrument underneath them, its flukes and fissures, extracted, outsourced materials, hauntings of extinct flora and fauna. Position the post through vents in the crust where earth gasps. Align it so all the living things, and even the recently dead, exhale in tandem. Damaged layers vibrate into creation. Oceans pull back, recalibrate tides, release heals a rift. Luthiers tuck away tools, fold aprons. From the core, a note bellows imperfectly out. Matter attempts a hum. And to close, I want to invite you all to unmute or to do just in your own space for us to hum together. So taking a deep inhale and on the exhale, humming.
Thank you so much, Stephanie and Petra and Cynthia and the rail. Thank you, Fong. Wonderful, wonderful time.
Echoing all of that, thank you all so much for your generosity today and this afternoon. We'd also like to thank the Marion Bolton Kippy Stroud Foundation and Tiger Foundation for sponsoring our NSE program and making these weekday conversations possible, and for their support of our growing archive, which you can view on the Rails YouTube channel. The Rail has been free and independent for 25 years. A donation directly supports our writers, production staff, and operations. Support our work through the link in the chat. And if you're available, join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. for a conversation with Julia Rommel and Lucas Blaylock, hosted by Chloe Stagaman, on the event of Hunks at Bureau. And as is real tradition, we now invite you to turn on your microphone and say hello and goodbye as you leave. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks so much for that. Thanks.
Bye,
Bye.
Such a
Thank
beautiful
so great.
reading.
So
Thank
great
you
to see you.
all.
Thank
you.
Yay.
Thank you so much.
Yay. Hi, Bree. Hi, Krista.
Wonderful to see
Yay.
you.
Hi, Petra. Hi,
Thank you
Stephanie.
so much.
Thank you
Hello.
also so much.
Great.
Thank you.